Hello, buddy. Welcome back to Tin Man's Core Channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I'm reacting to my third and final Midnight Terrors video for you guys, and this was titled 4 Most Disturbing True School Horror Stories. So without further ado, I'm going to turn these lights off, move the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the road in the bag, shall we? Okay, here we go.
All right. Let me tell you a story that's been hanging over my family like a ghost.
Okay.
Something we don't really talk about. And honestly, something I'm not even supposed to know. It's one of those stories that feels like it belongs in a movie, but it's very, very real. It's about my grandfather, back when he was young, probably around his early 30s, and had just become the principal of an elementary school. He was one of those natural leaders, super well respected, always knew how to handle people, and clearly left a mark on the folks around him. I remember going to events as a kid where people would be clapping for him like he was a celebrity. And even then, I knew there was something special about him. Anyway, there was this one student who was having a rough time in school, acting out, getting into trouble, the usual stuff you'd expect from a kid who just needed some guidance. My grandfather took the time to talk with the boy's father, encouraged him to be more involved, and believe it or not, it made all the difference. A few weeks later, that kid was a totally different person, smiling, doing well in school, even staying late to shoot hoops with his dad.
See, that's what we need right there. More people like his grandfather who can talk to not only the parents or guardians of this particular child, but the child themselves. Because someone like him can convince them that what they're doing is not okay, and they can get in trouble for acting out and misbehaving. And then once you talk to them, it's almost like a reverse switch just happened like that. But anyway, let's continue with the story and see what happens next.
My grandpa would see them out there while locking up, and I think that really meant something to him. Like, he'd actually helped fix something in a way that mattered. But that's where the good part of the story ends, because not long after, things took a dark turn. The school janitor at the time, a man named Stanley, had become a problem. He was drinking on the job, causing scenes, and just being an unstable presence at the school. My grandfather tried to help, gave him chances, had conversations, but Stanley kept showing up drunk. One day he was so far gone my grandfather had to send him home and made the decision to officially fire him. He called the superintendent to give him a heads up and told him not to contact Stanley until he was sober because he knew the guy could be volatile. But of course, someone didn't listen. The superintendent, in a fit of rage or arrogance, called Stanley that same night and told him he was fired, completely ignoring my grandfather's warning. No one told my grandfather this happened, so he went to bed thinking he'd deal with it the next day, not knowing that chaos was already unfolding. That night, Stanley went back to the school. He broke in, trashed a bunch of offices, and eventually got into my grandfather's, where he rifled through files and paperwork. He was looking for something, or someone, and unfortunately, he found what he needed. On his way out of the building, he spotted the father and son, the same ones my grandfather had helped just weeks earlier, playing basketball under the floodlights. Stanley approached them, pulled a gun, and shot the little boy right there on the court.
Holy Jolito! I blame the darn superintendent. You should have took this guy's grandfather's warning and waited until he's sober up the next day and call him and tell him he was fired. Then none of this would have happened. A boy that the grandfather helped is shot down on the basketball court that him and his dad are just playing at. He shouldn't have to take his anger out on him, but I know now that dad is going to knock him down to the ground for doing that.
The father, in his grief and rage, somehow managed to wrestle the gun away and shoot Stanley, ending the nightmare right then and there. My grandfather got the call from the police that night. When he arrived, there were two bodies, Stanley and the boy, and a broken man sobbing over his son. What shattered him even more was what the police found in Stanley's pocket: a handwritten hit list, names and addresses of people he was planning to kill. And at the top of that list, my grandfather. That father unknowingly saved my grandfather's life, and maybe even my mom's and grandmother's too. Had Stanley followed through with his plan. I get chills just thinking about how close my family came to being ripped apart. My grandfather never spoke about it again after telling the story once, and my mom made me promise not to bring it up to him. He carried that weight for the rest of his life. The guilt, the what ifs, all of it. To this day, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if that dad and his son hadn't been out there playing basketball that night. It's a haunting thought, but at the same time, it's a reminder of how one small act, just spending time with your kid, ended up changing the course of multiple lives. And honestly, I'm just grateful Stanley didn't get any further than he did.
Man, that's awful. But I get it. If your mother tells you to respect your grandparents' wishes about not talking about this certain topic again, listen, because you bring it up, they'll probably get into a fit of rage and say, I don't want to talk about it no more. Leave it alone. But if that father and son weren't there playing on the basketball court, the boy would have not been shot. But Stanley would have gone after all the people on his list and killing them all. But if somebody saw him going to the school, then, of course, the cops would have been called and they could have arrested him right then and there. There's a lot of theories that could have happened that night, but you can't change what happened, unfortunately. I know you can't bring back that guy's son, but I know that they're grateful for him stepping up and getting rid of Stanley before he came after them. But if that darn superintendent did not call him when he was in a fit of rage, then this wouldn't all happen at all. May that boy rest in peace. And I'm sorry that this guy's grandfather and his family had to deal with that tragedy. I mean, that's just one phone call you do not want to get. The kid that you helped was shot for no apparent reason at all.
Back when I was a sophomore in high school, around 2011, I used to hang out a lot with my friend Hadley. We lived in this small, kind of worn down town right on the edge of Pennsylvania and Ohio, where most of the factories had shut down decades ago, and people just slowly moved away. Because of the shrinking population, a bunch of the old schools in the area had been shut down and left to rot. Perfect spots for teenagers to sneak into and mess around. You know, the kind of places where kids would break windows for fun or sneak off to smoke without anyone bothering them. One afternoon, Hadley and I decided to check out one of those old school buildings, and we found ourselves in this breezeway section where most of the windows had been shattered out, so getting in wasn't exactly a challenge. We were just goofing off, laughing about dumb stuff, when out of nowhere, this man came around the corner and grabbed Hadley by the arm. He told her to come with him, real calm-like, and our first instinct was that he might be someone from the school district trying to scare us or call the cops. So we did what any freaked-out teenagers would do. We ran like hell and didn't stop until we made it to my cousin's place down the street.
Yeah, I was about to say, run away, because I don't think that's somebody from the school district inside of an abandoned school. But if you go to explore places like that, I would not break out the windows, because then a cop was running by in their patrol vehicle and they saw that, they probably think you're breaking in to steal something. I would try to find a window that's like able to be opened and slide it open and get in. But I guarantee that this is probably some crazy homeless dude living there and saw them two kids and was going to take them to his quarters in the school, probably. I don't know, but I'm glad they ran away from this dude. But I hope this dude don't get out of that school and follow him, because that'd be creepy.
It happened to be the day before my aunt's birthday, and the whole family was at the house celebrating, so we felt a lot safer there. After hanging around for a while, most of the family decided to go out to eat, But Hadley, my cousin, and I stayed behind to chill. It got dark, and the three of us were sitting on the front stoop, just smoking and talking about what had happened earlier, when we saw something, or rather, someone, walking up the driveway. But not from the street like a normal person. He was coming from the side of the house near the garage, where the woods began, and something about him instantly felt off. He had his coat pulled up over the bottom half of his face, and his hat yanked low, so you could barely see anything but his eyes. At first I thought maybe he was holding keys, or trying to hand something to us. My dumb brain even thought it might be my uncle messing with us. So I started walking toward him, and right then my cousin yelled, "Jake, get away from him." And as I got a better look, I realized what he was doing. He wasn't holding keys. The guy was masturbating while walking straight toward us, and I just froze for a second, stunned. We bolted, ran around to the front of the house, and got inside just in time to lock the door behind us.
Oh, that is so sick. Man, that guy's completely a mental nutcase. He saw pretty girls entering the building, and he wanted to find out where he lived just so he can, like, keep looking at him and, I can't believe I'm saying this, but jerk off his privates. He's really one messed up creep. Yeah, go inside the house and call the cops on him because he don't need to be around there at all.
And he didn't stop. He came right up to the sliding glass door and finished what he was doing all over it before disappearing back toward the woods. We were freaking out, totally panicked. The cops showed up after we called, asked us some basic questions, but nothing really came of it right then. A week or so later, a girl who used to go to our high school heard about what happened and said she remembered seeing a sketchy car parked near the back of the property that same day. Luckily, she had the good sense to jot down the license plate. She gave it to the cops, and they traced it to some guy from Ohio. But since we lived practically right on the border, there wasn't much movement on our side. Fast forward a few weeks, and we hear about this terrifying incident at a Walmart in Youngstown. Some woman was followed to her car by a man who tried to force his way into her home after tailing her from the parking lot. That man ended up being the same creep from the abandoned school and from my cousin's house. He was arrested and finally charged in both Ohio and Pennsylvania because he had a pattern of harassing and assaulting women in Walmart parking lots across both states. Eventually, Hadley, my cousin, and I all had to testify in court. And seeing his mugshot was the moment everything clicked. We realized it was the same guy who had tried to drag Hadley off in that abandoned school, and that it was never about calling the police. He had something way darker in mind. He ended up getting a few years in prison, which honestly didn't feel like enough. Last I heard, he got out around 2015 or 2016.
Are you kidding me? I agree with this person telling the story. I mean, only a few years in prison? No. If he was masturbating and finishing off shooting the stuff all over the sliding door and then going chasing after women at Walmart parking lots, he would need to be put in there for like 10 to 15 at least. Because I know once he got back out, he was probably going to do the same thing over again. But I figured that it had to be the same guy from the school. He followed them home and he started messing with his junk. So I've got a feeling that if he took that girl up to where he wanted to go into school, he probably would have assaulted her. Yuck. Can't believe there's a bunch of sick, twisted individuals like this guy out there. Pretty much traumatized kids for life just seeing you mess with yourself and then shooting off your baby making stuff all over the darn sliding door. I'm glad he got arrested, but I can't believe he got let go. I'm just saying. He should have been in there longer. But anyway, let's get to story number 3 before I get madder about this one.
Back in high school, one of the worst decisions I ever made was signing up for AP Physics, especially because I ended up taking it with a bunch of seniors while I was only a sophomore. On the first day, I walked into that classroom feeling totally out of place, and my teacher immediately paired me with the only other underclassman in the room, a freshman named Josh. Right away, he gave off a vibe that made me want to sit literally anywhere else. His head was half shaved like he'd done it in the dark with no mirror. He never seemed fully present, and he'd sit there munching on warm Skittles straight from his hoodie pocket like it was normal behavior. I don't know how to explain it, but being around him felt the same way it might feel holding a piece of raw meat next to a starving animal. It was like he was just waiting for the moment to snap. Even though I didn't want anything to do with him, our teacher made us swap numbers so we could collaborate or whatever. That really bothered me because something in my gut just said, you don't want this kid knowing anything about you. For the first couple weeks, he didn't say a word to me, and I started thinking maybe I'd just been too judgmental. Maybe he was just shy or socially awkward. Then out of nowhere, he broke the silence one day by asking if I was the girl who drove the F-150. I was caught a little off guard, but I said yeah, and he launched into how he liked cars and saw me driving around and thought my truck was cool. After that, we started talking a bit. He seemed like he just wanted to make a friend, and I tried to be open-minded. He started texting me a lot, just casual stuff, nothing too strange.
Okay, one thing I have problems with about this whole situation, like she said, you don't want no strange kid knowing your number, but also knowing what vehicle you drive and where you live and other stuff like that. But if they start doing an easy conversation about, oh yeah, they like cars and they like the truck and just chit chat about stuff, then I suppose that's okay. But then you got to watch out for a lot of red flag warning signs, because that guy might end up texting some weird, creepy messages, and then you might want to not hang around him anymore. I got a feeling that's about to happen here, but I'm not going to say anything else. So let's just continue on with the story, shall we?
But even while we were having those normal conversations, that feeling never really went away. It was like some part of me knew I shouldn't be telling him anything, like I needed to keep that wall up, no matter how nice he seemed. Then one night, I got home late from work. I was pulling shifts at a restaurant about 20 minutes away, and I usually kept my phone off during my shifts. I turned it back on around midnight and saw a bunch of texts from Josh. These weren't the "how was your day" kind of texts. They were messages like, "I love you. I want to take you to homecoming and be my girlfriend." But instead of sounding sweet, they came off like demands, like I didn't have a choice in the matter. I gently tried to friend zone him and said I was going to bed, and he replied with just one word: no. I was completely creeped out. I didn't want to see him on Monday, but skipping class wasn't an option. When I did show up,
If somebody messaged you and you tell them you're going to sleep and they say no, I would be concerned, because you never know, that person will try to locate where you are, especially if your phone has got one of them tracking app things on it, and find out where you live, because then they can be serious towards you. And you do not want that to happen at all.
he gave me that same stare from the first day, like he was sizing me up, and I avoided eye contact the entire class. As soon as the bell rang, I rushed out and saw him watching me from the sidewalk while I drove off. That was when I called one of my guy friends and asked him to start riding home with me after school. I told him it would make me feel safer, and thankfully he was cool about it. Later that night, I came home from another shift and checked my phone, only to find more messages from Josh. But this time, it wasn't "I love you" or anything innocent. It was graphic. He was sending me texts describing in detail the things he wanted me to do to him, and I felt sick reading them. I let it go on for a few more weeks, even though I was clearly uncomfortable, until it hit a breaking point. One night he texted me something along the lines of, "If you don't love me, I might as well be dead." That was it for me. I finally went to the dean. But instead of getting help, I was met with excuses. She told me Josh was special needs and to cut him some slack, like that somehow erased the fact that his messages were straight up predatory.
Are you kidding me? Darn dean of that school wants to stick up for somebody like that, thinking, oh, he's got special needs. But bull crap. If he's sending her predatory messages like what he wanted her to do with him in a sexual nature, then you need to be talking to him and expelling him. Because it sounds like that dude needs some mental help. I cannot believe that there's people that run schools like this that want to take the sides of the people causing the problem to the other people. Makes me sick to the stomach.
She said she'd talk to him, but not to worry because he probably wouldn't do anything. I left feeling angry and completely unprotected, so I told my dad, who rallied the family, my uncles, cousins, the whole Italian crew, to keep a lookout. Eventually, I blocked Josh's number, and the messages stopped. But that's when things really got weird. Our home security cameras started picking up someone outside our house at night, and although we couldn't get a perfectly clear shot, it looked a lot like Josh. He'd knock on the windows and peek into my truck, so my dad called the police. Thankfully, the cops were really proactive and started patrolling the area around our house at night, which helped keep him away. But he didn't give up. He just changed tactics. He started calling the restaurant where I worked, asking for my schedule. My manager eventually flagged it and warned him to stop. Then Josh began showing up at the restaurant, sitting at tables and leaving paper cranes with messages like, "I love you," and "Your new boyfriend isn't good for you. I am." I kept pretending I didn't see him, but he was everywhere, following me to class, to my car, even to work. I never went anywhere alone anymore, and seriously considered skipping prom because I just didn't feel safe. After months of this, my dad helped me file for a restraining order, and thankfully, it was granted. For 5 years, Josh legally couldn't come near me or contact me, and that finally brought everything to a stop. I didn't see him again until senior year. I was walking through the hallway with my friends when I spotted him at the other end. He saw me, froze, and stared as I passed by with that same creepy, hollow look he had when we first met. It sent a chill down my spine. You might be wondering why nothing really happened when I went to the dean, or even when the cops got involved. Well, where I live, there are laws that make it a lot harder to discipline or charge someone with special needs, even when their behavior is threatening. I don't think that's fair, but it is what it is. The last time I ever saw Josh was at graduation. I swear I saw him in the crowd near the front rows when I walked across the stage. Maybe he was there for someone else, but something tells me he was there for me. If there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's that this kind of situation can happen to literally anyone. I never thought something like this would happen to me. It stole my sense of safety, my peace of mind, and a huge chunk of my high school experience. So please, if someone makes you feel uncomfortable, don't feel obligated to be nice. Trust your gut. It's there for a reason. Nowadays, things are way better. I'm in a healthy, serious relationship with someone I truly care about. And while I wish I hadn't gone through all of that, I can say I learned a lot from it.
Good for you. You found somebody that you can spend the rest of your life with, and you don't have to worry about Josh anymore. But I am seriously mad that in some states the police and people that work at the schools can't do anything for special needs kids if they did anything threatening to somebody else. Really? You can't treat them like any other bad student and either get him detention or something? I mean, good lordy. That ain't right at all. I wish the cops were able to find him and confront him and say, look, you keep doing this, she's going to file a restraining order on you. Which she did, thankfully. But if he kept on seeing her, try to talk to her, he would get his butt in jail for sure. But thankfully, she don't have to deal with him no more. She moved on. And hopefully that dude is getting some help that he needs. Because I'd be furious if he kept on trying to stalk her. But anyway, let's get to the final story in this video out.
So growing up, my life was kind of a blur of new towns and unpacked boxes. By the time I hit my first year of high school, I had already moved like 7 times. But I had finally started settling in. I'd been in the same place for over a year, made a tight group of friends in middle school, and thankfully we all ended up going to the same high school. Things finally felt somewhat normal. One of those friends introduced me to this guy named Sam. He was a few years older, almost 4 years, I think, and they knew each other from the school band, even though he was way bigger than any of us. Tall, stocky, just a huge presence. We welcomed him in. He had this weird energy at first, but we brushed it off. I'd never really been afraid of big guys before, but, well, let's just say I learned my lesson. Home wasn't exactly where I wanted to be, so I spent as much time as possible at school. Some days I'd just hang around campus with my friends until it was nearly dark, not going home until 6 or 7 in the evening. A few of us usually walked the same route for part of the way, but one chilly afternoon, it was just me. Sam offered to walk me home, said it was no big deal. He shared this strange little story about how he once didn't walk a friend home back in California, and something terrible happened. He didn't go into detail, and I didn't ask. I thought maybe he was just being considerate. After that walk, we started talking more. We found out we had both lived in California before, and that gave us something to connect over. We exchanged numbers, started texting a lot. Most nights he'd vent to me about feeling depressed or hurting himself, and I honestly just wanted to be a good friend. A few months in, he pulled this dramatic move. He learned some Disney song on his ukulele and serenaded me right there in the school cafeteria. It was sweet but awkward, and unfortunately, I was already seeing someone. When I told him that, his reaction wasn't normal. He didn't yell or cry. He just got really quiet and weird, like this eerie kind of twitchy anger simmering under the surface. I felt awful. After that, things got weird. I'd see him around school, which was normal, but then I started noticing that he'd show up in places where I didn't expect him. Like I'd be walking somewhere, and suddenly there he was, behind me, not saying anything, just there. He started tailing me between classes, not close enough to walk with me, but far enough to give me that spine-crawling feeling. I started pulling back from the friend group, and somehow that made it worse. I had people walk with me between classes, just so I wouldn't have to be alone. And the worst part, he knew where I lived. Then he started talking, not to me, but to our mutual friends, spinning this story about a girl he used to know in California. At first, it just seemed like a coincidence. She had my name. Then she also had my brown curly hair and my blue eyes. And each time he talked about her, she sounded more and more like me. Then came the part where he said she died. According to him, they were walking home when they got jumped. Some guy with a knife tried to rob them, and she was killed on her birthday, January 24th, which just so happens to be my birthday. He said she died in his arms, bleeding out. Her name was Sarah. My name is Sarah. It was like he created this fantasy of my death and convinced himself it was real. I was terrified. He would talk about this dead girl who looked exactly like me while still following me around, still knowing exactly where I lived. My boyfriend at the time wasn't exactly great. He was emotionally abusive and sometimes violent. But in a twisted way, I stuck close to him because I figured if something went down, at least he could throw a punch. Things came to a head one day when Sam had some kind of meltdown at school. He completely lost it and bolted out of the building. I was one of the few people who knew about his mental health struggles, and despite everything, I went after him. I found him curled up near the gym, shaking and crying. When I sat down to check on him, that's when he told me his version of the story. He said we were walking home from a concert in California. A homeless man came out of an alley with a rusty knife, demanding money. I panicked, pulled out my phone. He thought I was calling the cops, so he stabbed me, over and over. And Sam? He just stood there in shock. Then he said he grabbed a broken bottle and attacked the guy, killing him with his own knife. He told me he had killed someone. At that point, it didn't matter if it was true or just some disturbing fantasy. I was done caring about his mental health. I was scared for my life. My friends urged me to go to the school counselor first before going to the police. So we did. We told her everything: the stalking, the fantasy stories, the supposed murder, and her response. She didn't take us seriously. The counselor went to the principal, and he decided to just have a talk with Sam. That was it. Afterwards, the principal told me that he didn't think Sam was dangerous or even mentally unstable. I couldn't believe it. I stopped trusting adults that day. I gave up on calling the cops. Instead, I kept my friends close, let my messed up boyfriend walk me to class, and checked over my shoulder every time I left the house. The school counselors even gaslit us into thinking maybe we were overreacting. Maybe it was all in our heads. But I have journals from that time, and my friends remember it too. So no, this wasn't some dramatic dream. It happened. And I still think about how close I might have come to being a name in someone else's twisted story.
I'm seriously mad at this school too. Because this girl had a serious issue with a guy that has mental problems, and he kept on saying that this girl he known in California looked exactly like her, had the same name, same birth date, and got killed on that day. That would give me warning signs to get him to go to guidance counselor or go seek mental health somewhere. But no, like she said, the adults in that school just think that he don't have no problem. Bull crap, he does. And if it would have got worse, he probably would have ended up snapping and killing her. But I'm just glad that she did not get hurt or assaulted by him. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more Midnight Terrorist content like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man Sports Channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor. I say that's a wrap, and have a nice day, y'all.